Hi guys, welcome back to This is Fortaleza. My name is Jaque and I am going to be talking about something that I feel was very crucial for me to know early on in my mental health journey and my self-love journey. And I'm going to be talking about something that the famous therapist Pete Walker acknowledged and talked a little bit about. I'm going to be talking about the 4 trauma responses. And something that I do want to acknowledge is that the 4 trauma responses have both healthy and unhealthy ways of showing up in your life. So I'm going to give a brief explanation of all 4, and I'm going to let you know which ones I resonate the most with and what I do in order to honor and respect my own boundaries, and also how I communicate them with my fellow loved ones, so that I can ensure that they are aware and conscious of who I am. And it is, for a lot of people just like me, it is the first step towards changing certain behavioral patterns and healing. So that's why I think I wanted this to be the first video, and I'm going to dive right into it. So there is 4, which they are the fight response, the flight response, the freeze response, and the fawn response. And the fight response is pretty straightforward. I feel like a lot of people really know the fight and flight response. But the fight response is when someone feels threatened or endangered, or whatever the situation is, their response mechanism is responding with aggression. Some symptoms I'm going to be looking over, you guys, because I want to make sure that I'm quoting the symptoms correctly. But some symptoms would be clenching your fist, feeling angry, grinding your teeth, muscle tension, punching a pillow or a wall, wanting to hurt or kill somebody, road rage, or destroying, breaking, or throwing things. That would be some symptoms of the fight response. So it's pretty straightforward and pretty straight to the point. The second response that the trauma response that we see that is very common is the flight response. And a lot of times when someone feels threatened or in danger, or they don't feel comfortable in a certain situation, they tend to avoid the situation. So flying away from whatever threat, harm, whatever it is, so they tend to avoid it. And some symptoms of the flight response will include getting fidgety, leaving, or avoiding confrontations, feeling trapped, dilated pupils, feeling jittery. In extreme cases, you eliminate body fluids like sweat, vomiting, urination, excessive exercising, and running away from things like responsibilities. So those are some symptoms of the flight response. The third one is the freeze response. And the freeze response is when someone feels threatened or in harm, they tend to literally freeze. They do not know how. They basically step out of their body, and they just don't have any physical or sometimes mental reaction towards the threat or the whatever they think might be threatening. And some examples would be feeling frozen on the spot, feeling panicked, or believing you literally cannot move, wanting to go into a cave or retreat, not dealing with threat directly. So you use escape mechanisms like binging, smoking, sex, picking at your hair, nails, body, excessive video game playing. Those would be some examples of the freeze response. And last but not least, the fawn response. So this is also known as the people-pleasing response. And it's very straightforward. It's literally when you are you feel threatened and you literally do not want to make people uncomfortable. So for people who suffer with this response, you have difficulty with saying no. You feel bad for having boundaries. You are unable to put yourself first in certain situations. You don't put your needs first. You are you go along with everything. So you basically resist on actually vocalizing your opinion. So those are the 4 responses, guys, and I wanted to introduce them because I wanted to let you know that I actually resonate with a couple of them, and those being the freeze and the freeze, the fawn, and the flight response. So it does depend on what scenario I am talking about, but something I noticed that as an adolescent, as a young child, I tend to have the fawn response. I had this fear with, being wrong. I didn't never wanted to get in trouble. I was always the good girl. Quite frankly, a lot of you guys who do know me in person, I'm a pretty extrovert person. I'm not afraid to speak my mind, but as an adolescent, I think I would consider myself to be a fairly introvert person, because I had this constant fear of projecting my actual feelings. I never wanted anybody to get in trouble. A lot of it has to do with different childhood traumas when it comes to the type of environment that you grew up in. And although I didn't have any direct trauma as an adolescent, I did witness some domestic abuse, whether it's my personal home or was a loved one's personal home. But a lot of that takes in consideration into the person that I became. So I had those programs installed as a young child. As I grew up, I started to develop myself, and thankfully I found an amazing group of friends that I still consider them family to this day. But I was able to step out of my comfort zone. So I don't feel like I resonate a lot with the fawn response, but I do see myself people pleasing in my professional life as well. So something that I do constantly, and I think is important, something that has helped me so much, is establishing boundaries for myself, and not only establishing them but also communicating them with the people that are around me. And that has helped me so much. Something that I do want to acknowledge is something that I say constantly, someone had told me, and I took it and has never left my side, is if you're not growing, you are decaying. So what that means is your boundaries are going to change. You're not going to have the same boundaries that you had as a 10-year-old, as a 25-year-old, as a 40-year-old. So that is okay. That is something that I constantly do, is I revisit, okay, what is triggering me in certain situations, whether it's professional, whether it's my personal, whether it's my relationships. What are things that I notice that are coming up and are triggering me now? And what I do is I establish those boundaries with myself, and then I communicate them with my loved ones and the people that are around me, to ensure that they are also aware and they can also be held accountable for knowing that. A lot of the times we assume that people know, we assume that it's common sense, but it's not. It's sometimes literally common sense for me will not be common sense for you. So that one is one that I did resonate a lot, and I do practice that on a constant basis. Another one that I do tend to find myself that I resonate with is the flight response. Sometimes when I'm in situations that I feel uncomfortable with, I would rather just ignore it. I isolate myself, and that's when sometimes I get into these depression episodes. So what I do is I bring someone who I love and I feel comfortable with, and I communicate my emotions and my feelings, so I can have some support system. But yes, these are the 4 trauma responses. Again, you can use them both healthy and in unhealthy ways, but like I said, was very crucial for me, because I was able to distinguish certain behavioral patterns that I noticed throughout my life, and now I can acknowledge it and pinpoint it, and I can communicate that with my loved ones. So I hope you guys like this video. Please share with someone that you love, who you might think will resonate with it. And if you guys haven't, make sure you guys subscribe and follow. This is Fortaleza. I'm also going to be tagging some resources down below, so if you guys are interested in learning more about these responses, I'm going to link them down below. And I'm going to be creating worksheet and worksheet for this exact topic on our website. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. I love you guys, and bendiciones.